EC2.
Hello and welcome back to CQ, the AWS Certification quiz show, where we're going to help you get in some extra prep for your next AWS exam. So today we are back to looking at our SA associate level exam, and today I've got with me Kerry. Kerry, welcome, and tell us a bit about what you do here at AWS.
Thanks, MJ. I'm really excited to be here. This is the first time I've been on Twitch and on certification quiz.
Yay!
I'm really excited. So my role is a solutions architect with AWS.
Here in Sydney?
Yes, I'm here in Sydney. I've been with the company about 18 months. It's a fantastic role. It's been really exciting. I get to meet lots of great customers out there who are wanting to do great things with the cloud. So it's a really interesting role.
And you work with most of our customers, right?
Yeah, I do actually. I work with lots of different types of customers. So I work with customers like startups. I work with small to medium businesses. I work with larger organisations, and it can be anything from customers that are like digital native. So they've just they only know the cloud. So that's how they've started. They've start up with a business where they've just started and they need some sort of technology, so they're using the cloud. Or I'm also working with customers that are larger corporations that have been around for a while, but they're just starting their cloud journey. So it's a really interesting place to be.
High pressure job, Kerry.
It is. You get to do lots of amazing things though. You get to do lots of different technology. You get to deal with lots of different aspects of the role. Some of the digital native customers, they're really into cloud and they know what they're doing. Then you've got lots of other customers who are just starting out and they're like, oh, okay, what's the first workload I should look at?
Oh, fantastic.
So it's really different.
So we're learning from them as we go as well, right?
We do. And it's lots of variety, lots of customers who are experimenting. So it's great, yeah.
So, bit of a question I have for you here. I hear you recently passed a certain exam, Kerry.
Yes, I did. And I'm very proud.
Yeah.
I recently passed the Solutions Architect Professional exam.
Wow.
So it's a tough exam. It's 3 hours, it's 75 questions. I had 5 seconds to spare at the end of the exam.
So you were press and submit with 5 seconds to
spare. I was
spare.
looking at the timer going down and I'm like, oh, quick, I have to pick my last one. I'm like, quick.
That's amazing.
So I really literally planned that exam out in a way that I literally had 5 seconds to spare to be able to finish that exam. So I did want to go back and look at some of the questions I'd answered, but
didn't have time.
No, I didn't have time. And typically I don't do that. I actually am the type of person that, once it's in, I go with my first gut instinct and I know that's the way it is. So I just literally lock it in. So it was really interesting exam, and I think later on in the quiz we'll have a tips.
Yes.
My tips.
I can't wait to hear
how
yours.
I passed the exam. Yeah.
So I think perfectly positioned for associate level exam today,
it is.
right?
Yep.
So the book we're using is available at wiley.com, also available at amazon.com. That is what we are using for all of our SA associate level exams.
Yep.
Kerry, are you ready to get started with me
am.
today?
Yep.
Let's bring up our first question. Everyone online, please remember we've got producer John looking after you from the poll perspective, so please vote along with us by typing in the number of the answer you think it is.
Yep.
You ready, Kerry?
Yes, I am.
First up, EC2.
Yep.
All right, let's get into it.
Yep.
Your web app needs 4 Amazon EC2 instances to support steady traffic nearly all of the time. On the last day of each month, that traffic triples. Okay. What is the most cost-effective way to handle this traffic pattern? Oh, nice start.
Interesting question. And really interesting about this question too is that when you go through the professional exam, a lot of the questions are similar in the state that they're much longer to read, but they have things like, what is the most cost-effective way?
Okay, so this behavioral type question. Okay.
So it's a good one. So web application, great. We have constant steady traffic, that's awesome.
Yep.
We know that. But on the last day of the month, it triples. So we want to be able to handle that incoming traffic on the last day of the month. So
in the most cost-effective way.
Cost-effective way, exactly. Okay. All right, so let's look through the different answers that we have here. So I can probably rule one out straight away, which would be number 4, because we don't actually need 12 reserved instances at all time. We only really need 4 at any given time. other than the last day of the month. So let's rule out 4 to begin with, and we'll go to the other 3 answers. So we'll look at, say, number 1. So run 4 on-demand instances constantly, then add 8 more on-demand instances. Well, you could do it that way, but it wouldn't be the most cost-effective way.
Okay.
No, it wouldn't be.
And that's that on-demand aspect, right?
Yes. So on-demand instances are more expensive than, say, reserved instances. So when you do reserved instances, you're looking at saving approximately up to 75% of the on-demand rate.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting concept there. So, so we would also then rule out number 3. Because you're still going with 4 on-demand instances constantly, and so that's not going to be the most cost-effective way. So for me, I would look at number 2, because you're running 4 reserved instances constantly.
For that steady state.
The steady state traffic. So that is a very cost-effective way, because you know that the traffic is very constant throughout the month. And then you would do 8 on-demand instances on the last day of the month, and that's, you could do
for
that
the
in
spike.
For that spike. So you could do that with a auto scaling group, for example. So you would look at doing a policy that would basically kick in on that last day of the month when the traffic starts to spike. You could also do scheduled auto scaling. I don't know. Personally, I would just let the policy handle it for you. So it's an automated thing. Because if you do scheduled, you might get that a bit wrong.
Yeah, what happens if you get it wrong? Exactly.
Yeah, so you might get that a bit wrong. So for me, it's number 2.
Locking in number 2, Kerry. Let's close that poll. Producer John. The majority have gone for number 2 today as well.
Great.
Looking like a good start.
Ooh.
Indeed. Fantastic.
It's a good one.
Feeling all right?
Yes.
That's the first one over and done with. Let's move on to
go.
question 2. What have we got for question 2? Oh, more EC2. Brilliant.
Okay.
How will you build for an elastic IP address? Great question.
Yeah. So for the viewers out there, I'm wondering if everyone knows what an elastic IP
Oh,
is.
please. Yep. Let's go through it.
So an elastic IP, for those who are out there viewing at the moment, elastic IP is like a static IP. So say, for example, you had a specific application and you needed a specific IP address. So you didn't want to just use a DNS address, you needed a specific IP. So you can use elastic IPs in the cloud to get that static IP. So that's what an elastic IP is.
Perfect.
So if we go through the different answers, it's so per second when associated with a running EC2 instance. Well, I'm kind of not sure about that. Per second is more related to like VMs, Linux instances. You can get it per second. And the other thing about that is it's per second when associated with a EC2 instance. Well, that's a bit different, because when it's associated with an EC2 instance, you don't actually pay for the elastic IP. So that's not right.
Yep. Number 2 is what most people online are going for right now.
So we'll just jump down to 3 and 4, because I'm pretty sure that it's number 2, but we'll look at 3 and 4. So per gigabyte for the amount of data that flows through them. Yeah, that kind of doesn't make sense. That's more like data transfer or something like that. And per network adapter based on the EC2 instance type. No, that's not right either. That's something completely elastic network adapter. That's different again too. So I look at number 2 and say per hour when not associated with an EC2 instance, because when it is associated with an EC2 instance, you don't pay for it.
Perfect.
So when it's not associated, you pay for it.
So nice, easy one.
Yeah.
Feeling pretty confident.
As
per all of our viewers, number 2 it is.
Of
course.
An easy one.
Let's move to number 3.
Easy.
Well, we got to, throw some of them in there now and again. And also good to know the different types of questions that are put in the exam as well, because you will get those odd ones,
right?
In
the associate exam, you will get those types of questions. You really need to know those different elements of each service and the features of the service to know whether it's the right one or not.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 3. S3. Ready?
I like S3.
Okay, here we go. Your company stores critical business documents in Amazon S3 and wants to minimize cost. Another cost one for you.
Yep. Cost.
Most documents are used actively for only about a month, then much less frequently. However, all data needs to be available immediately when requested. How can you meet these requirements?
Okay. So if we look at the question and we look at pulling out some information out of those questions, it's really important to this question.
Yep.
So first of all, it's critical business documents. So we're looking at critical business documents. We do want to minimize cost. So we want to look at cost as well. The other thing that mentions there is it's used actively for about a month.
Yep.
So it's like 30-day period, and then much less. But the other very key important point right at the end there is that data needs to be available immediately when requested.
No lag.
No.
Yep.
So
Cool.
you can't be waiting for that data to come back. So how can we meet those requirements? Okay, so if we look at the first one, reduce redundancy storage after 30 days. That's an interesting one, but probably not the right thing because there's less durability with that one. So I would rule that one out straight away. Also, number 2, because of Glacier, if our viewers are not aware or not familiar with Glacier, there's actually a retrieval time for Glacier. So it says in the question they want it available immediately, so Glacier is not the right one.
And that's a tricky one because normally storage, cost, you would always jump to Glacier in the exams, right?
Yes,
so I like that.
So you've got to be really careful when you read the questions as well in the exam to make sure you're getting it right. Let's jump down to 4, turn on versioning, then migrate the older version to Glacier. Well, we just said Glacier's out, so we're going to rule that one out. So I'm going to go with 3. So 3, you would keep it in the standard tier.
Yep.
And then after 30 days, you would migrate it or move it to infrequent access. So I'm going to go with 3 as my answer.
All right, 100% online poll has gone with 3 as well. I don't know if you were looking at that.
No, I wasn't looking at that actually.
Pretty cool.
But before we go on, I just want to mention
please
something.
do.
For number 3 as well, the interesting thing is that if our viewers are not aware, there is a intelligent tiering feature that actually is used by a lot of, and that recently came out. I can't say exactly when, it was probably about 6 months ago. But
this year, right? Yep.
Yeah, it was this year. And so the great thing about the intelligent tiering feature is the fact that you can allow S3 to tier that object for you. So you can have it in standard. You make the tiering intelligent tiering, so you allocate that to the object, and after 30 days, it will tier that object to infrequent access for you. You don't have to think about that. So it's not a manual process, it becomes automated, which is great.
Wow.
So you then save costs, you're not even, and if you've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of objects in your bucket or multiple buckets, you don't want to have to think about that. So a great thing about that. And then if you were to access that object that was tiered for you, it would immediately move that back to standard for you. So that's a really great feature. Yeah.
Thanks for that information, Kerry. You can tell you've just come out of an exam, right?
Can you?
All right, the poll. Producer John, I actually can't see the poll, so I don't know what we are going for online, but you're locking in number 3?
Yeah, we locked in number 3. I think everyone said 100% for.
Okay.
100%. I interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologise at all. We're just making producer
so
John work a bit, right? Well, you said it was your favourite. So. Number 3 it is. Let's move on to question number 4. All right, jumping to auto scaling, which I believe you're also pretty happy with.
It's one of those things. So the question is, which of the
Let me read it for you.
Okay.
Oh no, please, if you want to do my job as well. This is brilliant. No, please. All right, let's go. Which of the following are the minimum required elements to create an auto scaling launch configuration?
Good question. Interesting question. So, key part of this question is the minimum required elements.
That's the tricky part, right? Because I jumped straight to 4 and think, well, of course, you need all that. But I'm assuming you're going to tell me that minimum bit makes a difference.
It does make a difference.
Okay.
So, in fact, you can look at some of these answers here, like number 3, for example, and you could definitely include your key pair and you could include your security group. There's lots of things that you can actually include in your launch configuration.
Especially if you have them already, just get them in there, right?
Yeah, but once you've created it, you can't change it. You'd have to recreate another one. But the other great thing about that is if you know and it's something that's very consistent, for example, it's a web server, for example. So you might know that the security group has to allow certain ports in and out, certain inbound traffic. So you've got that already. You know that is something that's going to be very consistent. You have your key pair, so you want to have that across all your web servers, so that's great. But it's not the minimum, right? So in an exam situation, this is not the minimum. This will be wrong. even though you can include it in the launch configuration, this would be wrong.
I would have got it wrong.
So if we take it back to what the minimum would be, so I've already ruled out 3, which means it rules out 4.
So we need to work backwards.
So we need to work backwards, which means if we don't need if the minimum does not need to include the key pair, well then that automatically rules out 2 as well. So you don't need to have the key pair included. So I'm going to go back to number 1. So
you're saying only 3 things needed.
Correct. Perfect. So you need the name of the configuration, you need the image, and you need the instance type. So the image being what operating system that you're running. Amazon Machine Image, or AMI, is often mentioned in a lot of our documentation. You'll see Amazon Machine Image. So that's a range of images that has Windows or Linux or the different variants of the operating system, and the instance type. So the family, it might be a T2 Micro or a T2 Medium or a P instance. It'll be the different specific instance types that you actually need.
Okay, happy with number 1?
I am happy.
You sound pretty confident.
I'm
bit of a mix on the poll.
Oh,
we
really?
have a mix between 1, 2, and 3,
Okay.
Actually. 1 and 2 the most popular.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, but you're saying no need for key pair. Let's reveal the answer.
Oh,
1 it is. Did you have that moment there,
I
Terry?
was like, maybe it's just me.
Awesome. All right, let's move to question number 5. We're moving to databases.
Okay,
Happy
great.
with that?
I like databases, yes.
Do you want to read the question, Ko?
No, you can read the question.
I think you should do it.
Oh, okay. So you are designing an e-commerce web application that will scale potentially to hundreds of thousands of concurrent users. What database technology is best suited to hold the session state for large numbers of concurrent users?
Oh, this is perfect. This is a real common circumstance, right?
Yep.
That we see.
E-commerce web applications, very common.
Yeah.
Lots of people running e-commerce web applications. Scaling is so important when we talk about cloud. We want to scale. We want to make sure that we can handle those hundreds of thousands of concurrent users.
Massive, yeah.
Lots of people, you want that traffic coming to your website because that means lots of, good business and So hundreds of thousands of concurrent users coming in at the same time. The other thing it mentions in this question is obviously database. So we're talking about database technology and session state. So session state is a really important concept when we're talking about web traffic. Session state is when I'm a user, for example, and I've logged into a particular website. Maybe I'm using some particular website that has me logged in.
Yep.
And something in the background might happen to that web application, and all of a sudden it logs me out, or it's lost track of where I was. And as a user or as an end user, you want to make sure that those customers can come while they're there, that session state is managed. So what that means is that they know exactly where you've been.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really good thing. So session state's really important, and concurrent users. So if we go through the options here, relational database using RDS, well, relational databases are typically used for transaction processing, OLTP workloads. Not particularly, can be performant, but can also have issues with, write traffic, for example, if they're under a lot of load. So if we drop down to S3, well, we know S3 is a blob storage or object storage that we use in the cloud, not traditionally used for something like managing session state, so that's an interesting one as well, but definitely not S3. Data warehousing using Redshift. Well, a data warehouse is typically for analysis and reporting, so Redshift is traditionally used for data warehousing, but not usually used for session state.
Yeah, that's the difference, right?
Yeah. So what they're talking about here, number 2, NoSQL database table using Dynamo. So I'll go with definitely number 2, and the reason for that is, and the other option is too, you could also use another database technology which is similar to that, which is ElastiCache, which is also an in-memory data store, key value pair in-memory data store.
We may or may not have a question coming up on that exact thing, Terry.
Exactly. So it's definitely NoSQL database table for that particular use case because of the fact that it's single-digit millisecond latency. It's a low latency database, so it's really fast. It can scale for hundreds of thousands of concurrent users. Concurrent users being those ones that are coming in at the same time. So you want to have a technology that can scale.
Can handle it.
Yep, so ElastiCache is another one, but also DynamoDB is also, they're NoSQL offerings and they are perfect for managing session state.
Perfect. Locking in number 2. Let's close that poll. 100% agreeing with you on this one, Kerry.
Lock it in.
2 it is.
Perfect. And what did the poll say? What did we have?
Yeah, 100% on number 2.
Perfect.
Everyone agreeing with you on that one.
That's great.
Great. All right, question number 6, Route 53. Which DNS record should you use to configure the transmission of email to your intended mail server?
Okay. All right, so this is an interesting one for the folks online that are not familiar with Route 53. Route 53 is the DNS service that we provide for our customers. So if you had a domain name that you wanted to register or with AWS, you would use something like Route 53. So you can register your domain, example.com or whatever it is, kerry.com, kerrymccrae.com.
I love it.
mjscott.com.
Bit of self-promotion.
So you would use Route 53 to host that domain. So,
great.
So the question was, which DNS record should we use to configure the transmission of email? So email is a very specific transmission.
Kind of given away in the question, but let's let everyone know what each of these types of records are. That'd be great.
So an SOA records, that's a state of authority record. So essentially that just identifies any base sort of DNS information and it stores that information about the domain. So
great.
So it's definitely not number 1. A records, well, an A record essentially what it does is it just points a domain name, kerrymccrae.com.
Plugging that one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to register that one.
We should look it up. Producer John.
Hang on, John, can you do that? And that will point you to an IP address of a host. So
perfect. For
any sort of domain, it needs to have an IP address behind that. So therefore, it needs to be pointed to a host. So A records is what that is used for. So that's what we use A records. So if we'll jump down to a CNAME record, so canonical name records, canonical.
I can't even say it.
I used to struggle with that. Canonical name. So a canonical name record is really to point one domain to another. So if you had a subdomain, you might point it to the domain, or you might use subdomains to point, a bunch of domains to one domain, for example. So that's not right in this particular case. So we've ruled out 1, 2, and 4. MX records, yes, well, they point to mail servers. So I am going to lock in number 3.
Mail exchange. Now, just before I check on the poll and reveal that answer for you, Kerry, we do have a special message for you on our online chat. It says, "Hi, Mum."
Oh,
which is super nice.
Hi, buddy. I think it might be Lachlan, my son.
Mum is doing great. We have 100% record so far, so let's make sure that's keep going and reveal his answer for number 6. Of course, mail exchange, it is.
Perfect.
Oh, luckily that one didn't go wrong right there.
I know, that would have been so embarrassing. And then my son's watching.
Let's move on to question 7.
Okay.
ElastiCache.
Oh, that's my favourite one.
Yeah.
Well, I said S3 was my favourite, didn't I? So
you can have more than one, that's fine. All right, here we go. You were working on a mobile gaming application. Perfect, another real life scenario. I love these ones. And are building a leaderboard feature to track the top scores across millions of users. Yep. Oh, millions. Okay, straight into the big one here.
Okay, yep.
Which AWS services are best suited for this use case?
Oh, great. So mobile gaming application, very featuresome in my household. Fortnite, as most people, who's not using Fortnite? There's probably lots of people not using it. Me, I don't use Fortnite. My son, on the other hand, my sons, on the other hand, just love it. So mobile gaming application, perfect.
Very relevant.
So it's specifically in this question, it's talking about building a leaderboard feature.
Yes.
So in this case, we're talking about quite a specific feature around this use case for a leaderboard. So if we look at what AWS services are best suited to this use case. And typically as an SA, when I go into a customer, I look at the use case and I say, all right, what use case are they trying to solve? Like what issue, what solution are they trying to get to? Because when you look at the use case, out of that use case comes the different services that you might want to use. Depending on what the particular use case it is, then therefore you'll pick a specific service or services, you'll bundle them together in a specific solution. So
I'm basically just getting you to do your daily
pretty
job
much.
here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
no problem. Okay, so if we get to the question.
A few different options here.
Yes, we've got a few different options. I think I can rule out a couple straight away. So we talked about Redshift before. Redshift is predominantly or typically used for a data warehouse use case. So analytics or massive aggregations of data. So you're wanting to aggregate lots of transactions that are coming and you want to aggregate that and you want to make that super fast. So data warehousing is typically one of those things where you want to do lots of reporting and analytics. Not typically used for a leaderboard feature, not that I've ever seen. So as far as I know, definitely not Redshift.
Cool.
If we talk about Amazon S3, again, we talked about that before. It's basically object storage. So it stores lots of, almost an infinite number of objects in S3 buckets.
Okay.
So, super cost efficient, but not typically used for this type of use case either.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with 2 and 3.
Which there's a few comments about, so let's hear what you're going to say about Memcached and Redis.
So essentially there's a couple of differences between Memcached and Redis. Both ElastiCache, Amazon ElastiCache is a fully managed in-memory data store, and you have the 2 different engines that you can use, which is Memcached and Redis. They have different feature sets. You know, Redis is an open source one. Memcached is also, they both basically rely on RAM to store their data. So it's an in-memory data source, so super fast, super efficient, low latency, similar to your DynamoDB, something like that. But the difference between the two is that Memcached is not actually highly available, whereas Redis is actually highly available. So it uses clustering, so it can be so you can horizontally scale Redis, whereas you can't do that with Memcached. And the other thing about Redis is that you can use something called sorted sets. So one of the features of Redis is you use sorted sets.
Okay.
And based on that sorted set, you can create like a leaderboard. So you can use ranking for leaderboards, and you can sort that data on the fly with, scores. And so millions of users, because it's super low latency.
What we need. Yep.
That's the one that we're looking for. So it's an awesome, application that you can use to do this sort of exact use case. So it's great. I'm going with number 3.
100% agreeing with you. And
Excellent.
I actually don't think that come through until you just about finished your...
Oh, really?
So thank you for the clarification there.
No
100% online, number 3.
Perfect.
Number 3 it is. So we are running out of time. So let us jump to your exam tip. You said you had one for us today. Is that all right?
Yes.
All right, let me play that. Ready?
Yep, I'm
Let's
ready.
do it.
Okay, so my exam tip of the week is if you are looking to do the professional cert, because it is 3 hours, it's a very long exam. So my tip was that don't drink a lot of water before you go into
Especially if you've got 5 seconds to spare.
If I had needed to go to the bathroom during the exam, I would have missed the last couple of questions. So don't drink a lot of water. Make sure you go to the bathroom before the exam.
I can't believe this one hasn't come up before. I'm loving it.
I wasn't allowed to take any water with me, so that was kind of a good thing because I probably would have been nervous and just constantly drinking water.
And you wouldn't have had your 2 minutes that you scheduled per
question.
Exactly.
So that was a really telling thing for me, and I thought that was great. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention was get really good at reading long questions and long answers, because the other thing about the professional exam, which is different to the associate exam, is that they're really long questions, long answers. So you need to get super efficient at reading those questions really quickly. I budgeted 2 minutes for every single question, and that's how I ended up with 5 seconds to spare at the end.
Kerry, you're amazing. thank you so much for joining us today, especially for the extra information you've given us and extra tips.
I've had so much fun. This has been a blast.
Well, we have to get you back on for a professional level, which we haven't done yet.
I'm happy to come on.
There we go. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back next week for another episode of CQ. Thank you.
See you guys.